Hello, I'm Sensei Alex Kakuyo. Thanks for joining me for meditation and Sutra study. This evening's practice will consist of a 15-minute guided meditation, a reading from a Buddhist Sutra, followed by a Dharma talk. The title of today's talk will be Transforming Daily Life into Spiritual Practice. Before we get into that, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you'll be notified when I post talks in the future. If you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that'd be great too. As we head into our guided meditation, I'll give you a moment to get into position. The only rules is that you need to be in a position that's comfortable and that you can hold for at least 15 minutes without moving. If you'd like to lie down, that's okay. I only ask that you please not fall asleep. If you want some instruction, what I like to do is sit cross-legged either on the floor or on a cushion. Back straight, chin slightly tucked. Left hand goes in the lap, palm up. Right hand goes over the left, palm up. In Buddhism, we call this the concentration mudra. Eyes can be closed, or if you'd like to keep them open, that's fine. Just point them downward at the floor at a 45-degree angle to eliminate visual distractions. We'll begin our meditation by breathing in and out through the nose. On every inhale, we extend the belly button slightly, as if we had a large meal, and we relax on the exhale. Breathing in this way engages the parasympathetic portion of our nervous system. It signals to our body that we're safe, and that it's okay to relax. If we're wondering what to do with our mind, we simply bring our focus to the physical sensations of our breathing. The feeling of air moving up and down our throat. The feeling of our belly expanding and contracting. The feeling of our clothing against our skin. We'll breathe in this way for about 2 minutes. I'll keep time. And if our mind wanders, that's okay. We just say hello to our thoughts and bring our focus back to our breathing. Wonderful. Keep breathing. Now we'll begin our visualization. Beginning by visualizing a fire burning in our belly, in the space behind our belly button. This fire burns just like a campfire in the woods, and it's our favorite color. If we like green, the fire is green. If we like red, the fire is red. With every inhale, we visualize ourselves bringing air in through our nostrils into our lungs. With every exhale, we breathe out of our nose and we visualize ourselves blowing on this fire in our belly, feeding it oxygen, making it bigger and brighter with every breath. This fire represents our own enlightened nature. And now we'll build up that enlightenment through the power of the breath. We'll breathe in this way for about a minute. I'll keep time. Excellent. Now, continuing with the visualization, we'll see a channel of energy going down from our belly to the center of the earth. Once we get there, we find an energy that's identical to our own. If the fire in our belly is blue, the earth's energy is blue. If the fire in our belly is purple, the earth's energy is purple. 2,600 years ago, when Buddha realized enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, he relied on the earth to help him do it. And now we'll do the same. With every inhale, we envision ourselves pulling energy up from the earth, blinding it with the fire of enlightenment in our belly. With every exhale, we continue to blow on that fire, making it bigger and brighter, amplifying it both with our breath and with the spiritual energy of the earth. We'll breathe in this way for about 2 minutes. I'll keep time. And if our mind wanders, that's okay. We say hello to our thoughts, bringing our attention back to our breathing and the visualization. Excellent. Now we visualize a second channel of energy going up from our belly all the way to the top of our head. With every inhale, we visualize ourselves bringing energy up from the earth, storing it in our belly, blending it with the fire of our own enlightened nature. With every exhale, we push that energy up out the top of our heads until it explodes like a volcano, showering every inch of us in healing spiritual light. With every inhale, we pull energy up from the earth. With every exhale, we push it out the top of our heads, sending healing wherever it's needed. We've had a difficult week, and now is our opportunity to recover. We'll breathe in this way for about a minute. I'll keep time. Good work. Everyone's sitting so quietly and so still, supporting one another in their training. It's nice to see. But now it's time to bring our meditation to a close. And we do that gently by closing off the channel of energy to the top of our heads, pushing down the energy until it stops right where it started, in our belly. Then we do the same with the channel of energy going down into the earth, pulling it back into ourselves. And as we do this, maybe we give the earth a silent bow, thanking her for helping us with our training. Next, we take a moment to contemplate the fire of our enlightened nature burning in our belly, reminding ourselves that this energy is always there if we need to call upon it. But now, as we bring our meditation to a close, we let the visualization fade. And we come back into our bodies by moving our head slowly to the left and then to the right, back and forth, feeling the physical sensations in our neck. Then we come back to center and we rotate our shoulders forward. Then back. Slowly, gently, feeling the movement of our clothing against our skin. Then we let them hang limply towards the floor. Finally, if our eyes are closed, we open them. I'll give you about 10 seconds to do that. Thanks for sitting with me. It's good to sit by yourself, but it's always better to sit with a group. So this is lovely. Now we'll enter the Sutra reading for this evening. This evening's reading comes from The Center Within by Reverend Gyome M. Kabose. Not necessary to have a copy of the text, however, it can be useful if you'd like to follow along. Tonight's reading comes from page 6. The essay is entitled, Buddhism is Everyday Life. When Nansen, a teacher, was asked, "What is Buddhism?" he answered, "Everyday life." This is one of the many ways to point out the essence of Buddhism. In Buddhism, we talk about the way, or path. In Chinese, it is called Tao. In Japanese, Do. Do is the path, or the way we live each day. What is this path? What kind of path do you walk? We make many pretensions and we represent things as we want them to be. We do not see things as they are. We do not understand life as it is. Buddhism is the most natural way of life where every little thing we do is the way. Without pretensions or artificiality, each path is uniquely an individual's own. Each way is different, and yet there is the great way that everyone walks. It is the same path, but different to each individual. It can be difficult to understand that the universal way is one's own way. This is the difference between the true way and the not true way. Just as freedom is different from lawlessness, freedom is also one with law, is always one with law. Freedom exists when law is lived. What this means is that one must find the way deep inside oneself. Yet, at the same time, the way does exist out there. Outside and inside become identical. The universal and particular become one. You live your own life and there is no pre-established pattern. Yet, your unique pattern forms the same way the universe forms. This is life's path. It is a flower blooming, the wind blowing. You live, I live. When you live the universal way, you see life expressing itself everywhere. It is such a tremendous, noble life that you cannot help being inspired. Life is art when lived this way. Art means it is absolute. There is creativity in life. Imitation has no value. Art must be original and unique. The art of haiku, Japanese poetry, is the Buddhist life expressed in poetic form. Each moment in life is a poem in itself. When each action is an expression of life itself, there is beauty and fulfillment. This is the universal path. It is the way that Nansen pointed to when he said, Buddhism is everyday life. The first teaching that Buddha gave when he stepped out from under the Bodhi tree was a lecture on the Four Noble Truths. These truths state, life is suffering. Suffering is caused by desire. The way to end suffering is to end desire. The way to end desire is the Noble Eightfold Path. But like everything in Buddhism, this teaching both answers questions and creates more questions. Is Buddha saying that every moment of life is terrible in the First Noble Truth? Of course not. There can be great joy, great contentment, great happiness in life. In fact, the cultivation of joy is part of Buddhist training. We turn away from things that cause suffering. We turn towards things that create joy, things that are wholesome and life-affirming. But in the second and third Noble Truth, one wonders, is Buddha saying that desire is inherently bad, or that we are bad people if we have desires? Of course not. Desire is a natural, normal part of life. If I'm hungry, it would be abnormal if I did not have a desire to eat. If I am tired, it's expected that I have a desire to sleep. What Buddha is saying in the Four Noble Truths is that everything in life is of a conditioned nature, which means everything in our universe will be born, it will transform, and it'll die. This is true of us. This is true of houseplants. This is true of waves in the ocean. Even our sun, though it may be very long-lived, billions of years old, eventually will wink out of existence. And in the Four Noble Truths, what Buddha is reminding us is that our suffering comes when our desires don't match up with the transformations of daily life. As an example, let's say we go to a restaurant and we order vanilla ice cream for dessert after a meal. If the waiter comes out and they bring us vanilla ice cream, there's no suffering. The transformations of life match perfectly with our desire. But let's say, instead of vanilla ice cream, the waiter brings out chocolate ice cream. Now there's a problem. Now there's suffering because what we want and what we have are not the same. But of course, it's not quite that simple because our level of suffering changes depending on our level of desire. Case in point, if we wanted vanilla ice cream, but we like chocolate, it's not terrible, the suffering is minimal. A moment of disappointment, and then we go on with our life. But if we had a tremendous desire for vanilla ice cream, we had a rough week, this is the one thing we are looking at to make it better, we want our vanilla ice cream with every fiber of our being, and instead we get chocolate. Now our suffering is tremendous because we have great desires and those desires have not been met. So in this calculus between what we want and what the world gives us, we have some decisions to make. We can respond in one of two ways. We can change the world to match our desires, or we can change our desires to match the world. And there are times when Either one of these choices can be appropriate. Suffering comes, however, when we make the wrong choice. So with the example of the vanilla ice cream, it's very normal and natural thing to talk to the waiter in a very polite, calm tone and say, hey, I actually asked for vanilla and you gave me chocolate. And then they bring out our vanilla ice cream and everything's okay. However, if our desire is so great that we act irrationally, that we act without the best interest of ourselves and the waiter in mind, if we yell at them, if we're rude, if we throw things, not only do we not get the vanilla ice cream we want, but now we've created suffering for ourselves and for others. And this is the way that daily life is Buddhist practice, because daily life gives us countless opportunities to make this choice and to reflect on if we made the right one. Do I eat the chocolate ice cream that I was given? Do I ask for it to be replaced with what I ordered? This is training. This is Buddhist practice rooted in the Four Noble Truths. Our spouse does something we don't like. Again, our desires not matching up with reality. How do we respond in that moment? That is the training of Buddhism. And if we learn to respond well in those moments, our lives are very peaceful, very contented, not because the world has changed necessarily, but because our minds have changed. And if we act inappropriately in those moments, when the person cuts us off in traffic, when we try to buy tickets to our favorite movie and there's none available, when we need to wash our clothes for work and the dryer breaks, well, if we react inappropriately, we suffer as a result. So many opportunities to practice in every moment of every day of life. So many transformations to work with. Now that said, there is a danger here. And this is why it's so important. This is why Reverend Gyome, in his wisdom, this is why Nansen, within his compassion, reminds us that Buddhism is everyday life. Because if we believe there's a separation, a duality between spirituality and daily life, well, spiritual practice, instead of becoming a source of joy and contentment, becomes yet another source of suffering. It transforms into escapism. We sit on the cushion not so we can learn how to deal with our problems skillfully, but so that we cannot think about our problems for a while and let them fester. It turns into a way for us to be good or to be better than other people. I'm thinking of a time many years ago, I was speaking to another Buddhist practitioner about going on retreats. And I told them about a retreat I had just done. And, we wake up at 6 a.m. and we do this and we do that. And they gave me this look, this kind of knowing, I gotcha kind of look, and said, well, at my temple, when we do retreats, we wake up at 4 in the morning. And based on their tone and their body language, it was clear that the idea was that their training was somehow more important, more difficult, because they sleep less. So the training was less about spiritual practice and more about how can I be better than you. And this is what happens. It's a normal, natural thing. We want the nice car, we want the nice house, we want the fancy jewelry, and we want enlightenment. Sarah at the PTA doesn't have enlightenment. Joe at work doesn't have enlightenment, but I, with my spiritual practice, I'm going to get it. I'll show him what's up. And then as we keep striving for this thing, it creates suffering, just like when we strive for the car, just like when we strive for the job or the status. So much striving, so much hard work, so much suffering. So what Reverend Gilme is trying to tell us is just don't try so hard. Work with what you have. Work with what life gives you. Sitting on the cushion is Buddhist practice. Washing the dishes is Buddhist practice. Working with the waiter who screwed up your order is Buddhist practice. Dealing with the car that broke down on the way to work is Buddhist practice if we approach it correctly. If we ask ourselves, what's the appropriate thing to do in this moment? Do I change the world to match my desires, or do I change my mind, my desires, to match what's in the world? Because the goal of Buddhist practice isn't to escape our daily life. Far from it. The goal is to dive deeper into our lives. We see this in the example of the Bodhisattvas. Celestial beings who have realized enlightenment, and instead of escaping off to some far-off netherland, they go down into the suffering of the world and they try to do something about it. They go down into daily life. We see this in the example of Kannan, the Bodhisattva of compassion, who's also known as the patron of fishermen. We see this in the example of Amida Buddha, the Buddha of infinite life, or infinite light, rather, who was known for the joy and compassion he showed towards farmers. Now, this is important because in Japan, at the time that these practices were really coming into their own, fishermen, farmers, they weren't viewed very highly in society. They were considered the lowest of the low. Because instead of being scholars, instead of being merchants or noble people, they worked with their hands, they worked with their bodies, they got dirty in their day-to-day life. They usually didn't have much in the way of money. They lived a subsistence lifestyle. So it means something that Kannan, that Amida, that Jizo, that the Bodhisattvas of Buddhism don't spend their time with nobility. They don't spend their time in the heaven realms with angels and gods. No, they're down there in the dirt, here with us in our daily lives, showing us that it is here in this moment that we realize enlightenment. Yes, we have heaven realms in Buddhism, but no one wants to go to them. Because the only place we can realize awakening, the only place we can find contentment is here, in our life as it is. Thus, we should view traditional spiritual practice, traditional Buddhist practice, as preparation for the real game. In the same way that a marathoner might run on a track to get ready for a race, we come to the Buddhist temple and train in the meditation hall for preparation for our daily life. The bowing, the chanting, the meditation, the sutra study trains our mind in such a way that we can deal with the waiter, the auto mechanic, the coworker, the child throwing a tantrum in the parking lot. There's no difference, no separation. Buddhism is daily life, and daily life is Buddhism. One and the same. This is the difference between an immanent understanding of Buddha nature and a transcendent understanding of Buddha nature. So if we try to appeal to the transcendent Buddha, we picture Buddha as being above us, better than us, somewhere up here. However, if we look to the immanent Buddha, then Buddha comes out of everything around us, including ourselves. It's interesting to note that the historical Buddha tried to be transcendent. He was an ascetic, and part of ascetic practice is turning away from the physical body, turning away from the physical world because it's dirty, it's defiled. We need to go so deep into our spirituality that everyday life disappears. And we see this throughout spiritual training even today, with ascetics who cut themselves with knives or burn themselves to try to show how much they've ascended. In the Catholic tradition long ago, it wasn't uncommon for Catholic monks to whip themselves or to wear hair shirts, which were designed to be very irritating to the skin, causing them to itch and break out in rashes because the body was foul. Daily life was against spiritual training. Asceticism. And when the Buddha tried asceticism through the practice of starvation, he didn't have any great awakening. He didn't realize enlightenment from turning from daily life. Instead, he almost died. And it was everyday life that saved his life, that saved him. It was a milkmaid named Sujata. Again, the lowest of the low, not a noble person, not a deva, not a god, a milkmaid, who pulled him from the river and gave him rice milk to eat. Even that meal, rice milk, white milk with white rice. How plain, how ordinary can you get? And yet, I am willing to bet a lot of money that that was the greatest tasting meal the Buddha had ever experienced in his life. Because he had left this mistaken notion that he needed to transcend life, and instead he looked to find the Buddha nature. He looked to find enlightenment in the everyday world that was around him. This is where we arrive at the teaching of Buddha nature, which we find in the Nirvana Sutra, which states that all living beings are Buddha. Again, the immanent Buddha that comes out of all of us. This is the separation that Reverend Gyome warns us about in the essay. Because if we don't understand that Buddha is in everything, if we think that Buddha is transcendent to our daily life, then that creates duality, that creates separation, that creates a spirituality that is an escapism or a status symbol. I want to realize enlightenment because I'm better than all sentient beings. But if we understand that all living beings are Buddha, our next step is to learn to venerate and honor the Buddha in all living beings. Now, we want to realize enlightenment not to escape all sentient beings, not to be better than them, but to save them in the same way that we've been saved. To help them in the same way that we've been helped. When we see Buddha in the waiter, it's easy to be polite to the waiter when they screw up our order. When we see Buddha in the person who cut us off in traffic, it's very easy to be kind to them. Not because we like getting cut off in traffic, not because we like when waiters screw up our order, but because we know that below that conditioned self, that mistaken self, there is a Buddha self, which is pure and undefiled. This is the oneness of reality, the oneness of daily life, the oneness between Buddhist practice and everyday practice. So how do we get to this level of understanding? Well, one practice that's been helpful in my own training is something called Menmitsu, which is a Japanese word that means extreme mindness or loving care. And Menmitsu goes back to this idea that all things are Buddha. Therefore, everything should be treated with extreme mindfulness, with loving care. If we're lining our shoes up at the door before we enter the meditation hall, if we're washing the dishes, if we're cleaning the litter box, we're not doing that from anything separate from ourselves. We're doing that for Buddha. The Buddha within us and the Buddha within all living beings. And as we honor and venerate everything around us, our desires transform. Yes, occasionally we still, because it's still appropriate to transform the world to match our desires. But more and more we transform our desires to match the world. If the cat poops in the litter box, then I desire to clean it up. If I'm tired after a long day of work, I desire to go to sleep. If the waiter screws up my order, I desire to very politely, very calmly tell the waiter / Buddha, hey, I ordered vanilla. Or maybe I just eat the chocolate. But the difference is we're doing this from a mind of compassion, a mind of wisdom, because we realize we're not talking to anyone or anything outside of ourselves. We're simply one aspect of the enlightened mind speaking and working with another aspect of the enlightened mind. And as we do this, as we speak and work and contribute to all the enlightened aspects of ourselves, the other aspects of the Buddha body, our desires disappear. And in their place, there's nothing left but Buddha. Amitabha. So, that's the talk for today. I hope it was helpful. I'll just end with a few announcements. So this was Meditation and Sutra Study. We do it every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you'll be notified when I post talks in the future. Also, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that'd be a huge help both to me and to the channel. On Sundays, we do something that's a little less involved. We do Dharma Sunday, which is me taking some topic from the news or daily life and speaking on it from a Buddhist perspective. So taking canonical Buddhist teachings and tying them with daily life. I hope to see you there. Until next time, Amitabha.